Hi, in 2016 I worked as an elections official in San Francisco. It's election day today, so I'm going to talk about that so that I don't have to think about the election this year that's happening now. So, polling places are run by volunteers, mostly people with really no qualifications, the type of bored person who volunteers to be like a lunchtime supervisor at local schools, for the thrill of telling children what to do. So, as an elections officer, most of the job just involves not getting trapped in long, meandering conversations with these people, the volunteers, just delivering a very clear message to them. Just follow the instructions step by step. Do not skip any steps. Do not skip any steps. After doing a few, realized that I also needed to verbally check in and have them confirm with me that they knew what to do with unregistered voters, because most of them don't pay attention during the training. Each elections officer has maybe a dozen or so polling places to look after, and at the beginning of the day, you just go around to each one and make sure they're not having any problems setting up. They're supposed to already have everything they need. I only had two problem sites during setup. One where the guy had locked himself out of his garage, or like his friend's garage, the garage they were supposed to be setting up in, and so instead had done nothing. Had apparently just been on the phone with the owner of the garage for about 90 minutes and hadn't done any setup, and people were about to, supposed to be arriving to vote, and you have to be open at the designated time. So I helped him set up in the driveway, and then like 5 minutes in, the owner of the garage came and like opened it up. Before that, I had found a place that just hadn't gotten about a third of their supplies, and we're given like these passenger vans filled with extra supplies. So I had to dig through and find all the stuff they were missing and give it to them. So in the middle of the day, there's not really a whole lot to do. You just drive from polling place to polling place, checking in, making sure that they're still doing all right. I didn't really run into any issues. There was one place that was turning away unregistered voters, and I was like, no, wrong. This was in San Francisco, where driving is just a nightmare, and parking is even worse. Thankfully, I got government plates for the day, so I got to park just pretty much anywhere. Couldn't park in front of a fire hydrant or on top of a police officer. That was about it. Other than that, I got to park just anywhere, which, after living in San Francisco for any amount of time, was just so cathartic. Because I've spent so much time in San Francisco just looking for parking and not finding it. Being able to park what would have been illegally any other day would just, like, that was easily the best part of my day. During these checks, we're also supposed to watch out for any kind of voter intimidation or interference of any kind. And I didn't really encounter anything like that, but there was this one much older guy who showed up. Um, there wasn't a line, but he definitely gave the impression that if there had been, he would have shoved his way to the front. He looked like he was dressed in a Halloween costume that was just supposed to be American. He had like this blue and white shirt and these red cargo shorts. Just frail old guy in this fanny pack. And he came in like, I'm here to vote for Trump. You can't stop me. Okay, and did you register with any particular party preference? Trump! I want to vote for Trump. Yes, I gathered that, sir. And if you just give us some basic information, we can get you your ballot and get you over behind the anonymity screen. Were you aware anonymity is an option? And that really set him off, because if he was there for anything, it was not anonymity. He seemed a little deflated when they weren't giving him the resistance or outrage that he had anticipated. But once I'd seen that they knew what to do with an unregistered voter, which of course he was, um, I left. But I'm sure he was obnoxious throughout. So setup was more or less fine. My midday checks all went pretty much okay. But takedown at the end was a nightmare. And this was what they'd warned us about. Like, apparently, this is always what the problem is. Because everyone closes at the same time, there's no way to really prepare them for it. And the elections officers can only be at one of their polling places when they close and need to start packing up at a time. And like my first three were fine, but if you hit a snag, that makes you late for the next one, which makes you late for the next one, and so on and so on. And the fourth one was, first off, it was in a school, it was locked. Took me 10 minutes just to get them to let me in. And then it turned out the reason they hadn't been watching the door was because they were all standing around trying to figure out where they'd gone wrong. Because it is complicated, to be fair, but really it's broken down for them in the manual into very simple steps. All you have to do is follow the steps in the right order and not skip any. And we tried to figure out where they'd gone wrong and repair it. But eventually we realized, like, we're just going to have to undo everything you've done. Thankfully, they hadn't, like, sealed any of the tamper-proof seals yet. So we just went back to the start. There was this one guy I had to send out into the hall to sit quietly because he was so obstructive. At one point he just started like getting up in my face like, why don't you know how to fix this? And I had to explain like, elections officials get exactly 1 extra day of training more than you volunteers. That is all. They didn't teach us to fix whatever major malfunction you had in that 1 extra day. Thankfully, they hadn't done any irreversible damage, and I had some like replacement envelopes and stuff for the ones they'd screwed up in the van. So I went and got those, and we managed to fix it eventually. And by the time I got to all my others, because at the end of the day, there's no backup to be called. Like if you need help at other points in the day, they can send some spare people. There are no spare people at the end. They're out collecting and fixing other mistakes. You're on your own. By the time I got to my other polling places, they had all finished up with no problem or had managed to work through the problems on their own, just calling the tech support line we had. And they, didn't really need much from me, so I was able to just take my stuff and go back. But it's a long day. Like, you start well before sunrise, you finish well after sunrise. I had to drive through one of the worst cities to drive in all day. So, if you encounter a volunteer or an election officer, just don't be a dick. They have a long day. It's probably too late for that message since it is election day today, but keep it in mind for midterms 2 years from now, I guess.